You have some questions?
Yes, so I'm here with the great Steve Freund, and the reason I'm harassing Steve Freund right after his gig is because Steve will be headlining a great Chicago Blues Guitar Showcase event on the 1st of October at the GVA Cafe in Morgan Hill. And one of the reasons I thought about Steve for this great show is because Steve is steeped in Chicago blues. And Steve, thank you for doing this show first.
My pleasure.
I know you got your start in Chicago many years ago, and you played with one of my favorite blues legends, the great Sunnyland Slim.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you got to meet him and what kind of influence he had on you?
Well, I'm from New York City, and in 1969, at the tender age of 17, I went to see Willie Dixon Chicago Blues All-Stars, which was Willie Dixon on bass, Johnny Shines on guitar, Clifton James on drums, and Clifton James, by the way, is the guy who's on all those Bo Diddley records.
Yeah.
And we had Big Walter Horton on harp, and Sunnyland Slim on piano and vocals. And when I saw this, I was mesmerized. I was just getting into the blues. This was the real deal. I knew it instinctively. And there was something about Sunnyland that drew me in spiritually. Just the way his whole aura. And on their break, they didn't really have a backstage. They had like a curtain room behind the stage, but they left it open for all us kids to come back there. So we all went back there. We were smoking and drinking a little bit, and Sunnyland was sitting there, and I was just drawn to him. My mother was a piano player, so I had a love for piano. And I just went up to Sonny, and I started talking to him. And he was so open to me, and he welcomed me. And I told him I just got a guitar and I'm starting to play and I want to play blues. And he said, well, you know, when you get good, you come to Chicago and play with me. And he gave me his business card. And wouldn't you know it, 7 years later, I made my pilgrimage out there and I showed up at one of his gigs. I said, Sunnyland, you don't remember me. 7 years ago in New York, I saw you at the Electric Circus. And you gave me your card, and I had his card, and he says, oh, man, I remember that. And I had a battery-powered amp, a pig-nose amp, and a little guitar, and he said, come on and sit in with me, go ahead. And I got up there and I played, and he loved it. He thought that, first of all, a guy with a battery amp was the coolest guy in the world, because the man could make money just by, it's a hustle. Chicago is a hustle.
Yeah.
It's all money and survival.
Yeah.
A guy with a battery amp, man, you could play anywhere you want. You could play on the streets, on the subway.
Yeah.
So he let me sit in, and he liked it, and then he invited me back, and I went back every night in the middle of the summer, and it was 110 degrees out, and I sat with Sunnyland, and it was Fred Below, and Big Walter, and God, even Willie Mabon came down.
That's
all these
a dream
guys.
team.
It was an amazing. It was like going back in time. If you're a baseball fan and being around Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Joe DiMaggio, and if you're a boxing fan, all the great. So it was like all-star time, and they accepted me as a 24-year-old kid from New York, and they liked my lead guitar playing, but my rhythms were weak, so I worked on that. But I eventually became Sunnyland's right-hand man.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
Steve.
it was a whole thing, man.
What a wonderful way to get you started, the Chicago blues scene.
Yeah, it was a real thing.
As far as blues guitar players go, could you name some of your influences, guys who really inspired you and you've learned from?
Well, guys who have inspired me were the guys who I actually saw live. And those were guys like Freddie King, B.B. and Albert. Those guys moved me the most. People who have... another one who really inspired me was Bob Margolin, because he was doing what I wanted to do a few years earlier than me. He was playing with Muddy, and I wanted to do that kind of thing. So I saw Bob doing that. Peter Green is another one I identify with. Similar backgrounds, but from a different country. But he was playing the real stuff. Man.
Right.
But my influences are B.B., Freddie and Albert, but Lonnie Johnson, Eddie Lang, Tiny Grimes, guys like that. The whole gamut. I just like virtuosos from whatever instrument to raise a bar.
Yeah.
One of my real heroes is Robert Lockwood Jr.
Right.
Is he was the guy who was really doing it, and he was really not heralded enough. He never got his due. And another guy who really was a personal favorite, two big favorites, who I knew personally, Hubert Sumlin and Louis Myers.
Yeah.
They both took me under their wing at an early age, and especially Hubert when I was just starting. He was so nice to me. He put his guitar around my shoulders and treated me like royalty, and I was a nothing. And he made me feel very well. He inspired me. And then later on, Louis. Louis was a hard-boiled egg, though. He was hard to crack because he came up in a hard way.
Yeah.
He came up underneath Tampa Red.
Yeah.
And those guys used to like kind of made it very hard for the younger guys to come up.
Sure.
So him and Dave both treated me a little harshly at first to try to see if I really had what it took.
Yeah.
And I stuck with it.
Yeah.
And after a while, I played with those guys, and I was so honored that Louis, at the end of his career, personally asked for me to play guitar in his last album.
What an honor.
It was a big honor. Me and John Primer played the guitars for him. And then the same thing with Hubert. I get to record with Hubert and do some duets on a record. And that was huge. So I've been blessed like that.
Well,
another guy was Otis Rush. I mean, I go to see Otis Rush and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but you can't really name them all because Chicago at that time was just so fertile.
Yeah.
With the greatness.
Yeah.
Of all instruments.
Yeah.
So it was just.
Well, that's what I'm hearing is you've basically kind of been inspired by, mentored by, and listened to. And drawn your own sound from so many various sources. Is that what we're going to get on October 1st? We're going to get the Steve Freund Chicago Blues sound?
I mean, the way I have always approached the music was to interpret the music I love by the people that I love to listen to. I never really felt that it would do me or anybody else any good to copy note for note anything.
Yeah.
Because I know from being with those guys that that's not what they did.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't like it. They just want you to be. Hubert said, be yourself. No matter what, just be yourself. There's nobody like you. Nobody feels like you do. Nobody thinks like you. So just be yourself. Let it come out your way. And I know B.B. King was the exact same way. And Louis Armstrong, if you listen to Louis, it's the purest blues of all.
Yeah.
And he never, it's all him.
Yeah.
And your feelings change moment to moment, and that's the way it should be. It should be a spontaneous thing. That's just my opinion.
Well, that's a great opinion, and I think anybody that's getting started in the business or looking into how to play the blues or the blues guitar probably would be very well served by listening to those words.
Well, I think it's also important to learn and have it as sort of like your arsenal of musical licks, to learn from everybody and have it.
Yeah.
But then play it your way.
Yeah.
Interpret it out.
Play it your way. Well, Steve Freund, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I, for one, am really looking forward to the show.
I am looking forward to it too.
And I think it's going to be a good time for anybody that loves blues and loves blues guitar and loves Mr. Steve Freund.
And how about the harp?
Well, I'll add a little. I'll throw a little harp in there.
It's going to be fun.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Ock.
All right.
All right.